Taxes was feeling so stuck. Sitting in traffic, squeezing into a parking spot, all to squeeze in getting tax help during your lunch break. Now Taxes is a TurboTax expert who does your taxes for you, while you go about your day getting real-time notifications about their progress and the most money back guaranteed. Now this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile apps. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees.
I had heard of the Hip because I worked in record stores, but I'd never heard them directly. Then they came on Saturday Night Live. Dan Aykroyd came out, said here from Kingston, Ontario.
Ladies and gentlemen from Kingston, Ontario, Canada, home of Kirk Muller, Walter Frank High, and me, it is my honor to introduce to America my friends, the Tragically Hip.
And they pan over to the band, and they start doing the intro to Grace 2, and I'm watching Gord, and there's something about him that says, stop what you are doing right now and pay attention to this.
Whoa, stop. Now back up. Yeah. Keep going. Okay, let's start at the start. Hey, it's JD here, and today I'm here to welcome you to the first ever The Tragically Hip Top 40 Countdown Podumentary. It's a podcast documentary. Get it? The focus of this project is to give you a glimpse into the show and its impact on the band, their legions of Canadian fans, and the audience watching live in Studio 8H and on television, unfortunately not high-definition television, around the world. So let's go back and look at this fateful Saturday night, March 25th, 1995.
Hey, this is Bill Kenny from the SNL Hall of Fame and Saturday Night Network podcasts. Here to talk about the appearance of the Tragically Hip on SNL back in 1995. This happens in season 20, which is not well regarded overall as a season of Saturday Night Live, but this is one of the better episodes, partially because of the Tragically Hip, but also because we do get John Goodman as host, but not really, because he's not able to get to New York City until later that week. So SNL calls in original not ready for primetime player Dan Aykroyd to help fill in the gaps. He ends up doing a lot of his classic characters like Bob Dole, Erwin Mainway, and Tom Snyder. John Goodman does eventually get there. He and Dan do the Blues Brothers in the monologue. Overall, it is a really, really good episode of SNL because of Dan and John and the Tragically Hip.
When we got the chance to play SNL, like so many other times in our career, we were like, okay, boys, this is it. We're going to be farting through silk. We took it as a sign of immediate success from This Is Our Life.
Dan Aykroyd was asked if he would do a guest feature on Saturday Night Live, and he ended up being in every skit and co-writing most of them. They were very eager to have him because I think the show had been struggling a bit, and part of the deal was that he got to pick the band. To our surprise, he chose us. We had just released Day for Night, and we went on and played 2 songs. The invitation to do it was very heady stuff. It felt like a big boost to our credibility to play live on a national US TV show. In all the years of the band, we never properly rehearsed. We'd get together with the intention of rehearsing, but then we'd end up jamming and writing songs. But for Saturday Night Live, we actually had to rehearse to get the songs down to 4 minutes because they were both 5-minute songs. Robbie Baker, This Is Our Life.
When we played Saturday Night Live, they had Norm Macdonald, a Canadian, do the warm-up. And every time he mentioned the Tragically Hip, the audience went crazy. He said, "Is everyone here from Canada tonight?" We never had that type of reaction to the musical guests during our warm-up. It really did feel like everybody was there for the Hip that night. I was really proud of them. Billy Ray from This Is Our Life.
So I was in university. I remember it came on. We're all very excited because you didn't get Canadian bands on Saturday Night Live, and we all watched Saturday Night Live religiously, so it was a big deal. And I remember Dan Aykroyd coming out wearing a shirt that looks like something a snowboarder would wear on laundry day, and thinking, as a country, we deserve better swag than that. But that was the only low point. And I also remember him whiffing the first line and thinking, did you do that on purpose? And just like, it was so effortlessly cool that we're all like, yeah.
You know, I had not heard of the Tragically Hip until Dan Aykroyd introduced them on SNL. And when he said, "my friends," and seemed so generally excited to introduce the band, I made sure to listen. That opening bass groove on Grace 2 by Gord Sinclair and his neck moving around. And then when Gord Downey came out to sing, he was so unique and so powerful. That song, I was blown away.
I remember watching the Hips SNL performance in the basement of a friend's house with a handful of other high school friends, most likely smoking pot and drinking Labatt 50, which I like to take to parties because no one else would steal it. I remember being weirdly nervous for the Hip in an almost protective way. When Gord sang, he said, "I'm tragically hip," as the opening line of Grace 2. I didn't realize that it was actually a nervous mistake on his part. It seemed perfect, like a rallying cry.
Come on, just let's go.
So that's how it all started, with a flubbed lyric and a wonderful jam through Grace 2. It's tough to say whether the audience fully and completely understood what they were witnessing, but fans of the Hip from across the world knew exactly what they had just seen. And they knew it was a special moment in Canadian pop culture history. So there's that.
Those words just blew my mind. Like America was going to know them, remember them.
I was at home visiting. I was on my last semester of university from Waterloo. And it was just so exciting because I'd seen the Hip at that point about 3 or 4 times. And all my friends knew me as the Hip crazy guy who always played the Hip. And to see them on Saturday Night Live and them getting that visibility was just proof that I wasn't crazy and that this band was really something big.
I was at Alfie's, the underground campus bar at Queens when I was a student there. Definitely a major Hip fan base location. They stopped the music and put the performance on the TVs, and we all collectively shared the monumental moment of our band making it to the SNL stage. I'm pretty sure I was even drinking a Moosehead at the time.
I opted not to go out on a Saturday night in college, and I stayed home and watched Saturday Night Live. And we waited. We had a few beers. We waited around, me and my buddy, who's from Ohio. And we watched it, and it was just, I was beside myself. I was jumping up and down on my bed, singing as loud as I could to them. I just couldn't believe it. I finally felt like we maybe as a nation, as a people, as a culture arrived. I don't think we did. It didn't make much of a difference, but man, it was an important time for me. I missed home so much at that time, and that was just a real nice experience.
Student at Brock University. I was living on my own in St. Catharines, and I remember being home by myself watching the broadcast. I was shocked when they opened with Grace 2. That song saved my life when Day for Night was released the previous fall. I'm pretty sure I cried.
Hearing them rip into a very non-commercial track, a very prototypical Tragically Hip song with Grace 2. It felt like Canada was having a moment in front of the world, and certainly in front of the Saturday Night Live audience. So it was a proud night to be Canadian. It was a proud night to be from Ontario, and it was a proud night to be a fan of the Tragically Hip.
When I think back to being in my high school bedroom and watching them on Saturday Night Live, I still feel so much pride. And I'm tearing up. I'm tearing up. It was just, what a wonderful night. And to see one of my favorite Canadian bands on Saturday Night Live.
I didn't spend a lot of time watching TV. I was usually in my room playing guitar, learning the Hip's latest songs. But on March 25th, there was something on that I had to see. I remember watching my favorite band, the now famous introduction from Dan Aykroyd, and the legendary happy accident of the opening lyrics. I felt a surge of pride, and I remember being so happy for this band getting a shot to play for such a large audience. I know there's always been debate about the song choice, but I was more than happy to hear Nautical Disaster played that evening.
This dream where I relished the fray and the screaming filled my head all day.
And just like that, it was over. Sure, there would be the good nights at the end of the show where they mingle with the host and the cast members, but that was it for our boys and their debut on American television. That night will forever be an arguing point for TTH fans across the globe. Did they choose the right songs? Was Gord too complacent? Were they too high? The what ifs will go on forever. The truth is, none of it matters. We had our favorite band on the precipice of something bigger than they had ever experienced up to that point, and they didn't surprise us. They did it their fucking way.
I have one for you. March 25, 1995. I remember where I was. I was in a dirty band house in Richmond, BC, and watching an episode of SNL with my favorite band. And did you see it live? Did you know that Gord was going to give the Skydiggers a shout out?
No, I was in Phoenix, Arizona with my wife and my two older kids. I have 3 kids. We were visiting some friends there, and we'd gone out for dinner because it's a 2 or 3 hours in Arizona. Is it mountain time or is it central time? I think it was 3 hours. We'd gone out for dinner, and because because of the time change, we got back and watched it. And I was just, excited to see them on Saturday Night Live. And at the end of Nautical Disaster, Gord referenced Penny Moore. And, it was kind of like, holy fuck, that's cool.
I watched it by myself, but dissected it with my bandmates the next day. And we had a heated debate about whether the 2 songs that they chose, Grace 2 and Nautical, were the best options for them breaking into the American market. I love both those songs, but for the success of the band, I was a little bit disappointed they couldn't sneak in New Orleans is Sinking, Just Thinking, or something that would kind of capture the imagination of the American audience. I also was a little bit disappointed with their performance. I thought musically they sounded great, but I thought Gord looked very tentative, shy, or nervous. We've all seen the doc, and we know that there might have been a little bit too much backstage shenanigans before that performance, but really would have liked those same Americans to see Gord with his hair on fire, metaphorically speaking.
Of course, when the hit played in 1995, it was a big deal, and the debate at the time, which still persists to this day, was whether the songs they played were the best choices to introduce them to the wider American audience. Especially in the doc, we saw that the band didn't feel that they should compromise themselves in any way for commercial reasons. Some might call it a bit too careless, while others just call it legendary.
Came up to do one of the big songs, to do a Courage or New Orleans is Sinking or Blow It High Dough.
We were promoting a new record.
Yeah, for sure.
Like everyone after the fact always says, "Oh, they should have played New Orleans is Sinking," or "They should have done this, they should have done that."
It was never even a notion.
It was like, "What songs are we doing? We're doing Grace 2 and Nautical Disaster. Perfect. Those are the 2 best songs live off this record." Mm-hmm. That's what we're doing.
It's hard for me to know if I actually remember this happening or if it's just conflated with my memories of watching it so many times since. They played my absolute favorite song, Grace 2. It's just one of these Canadian pop culture moments that is forever ingrained in our Canadiana.
I was at the show because my wife's best friend was a producer at the time. I met Gord at the Afterparty, and he was such a class act. I think the funniest thing I recall is also at the Afterparty, with David Spade stopping next to me to ask, "Who are those guys with all the fans around them?" while no one was talking to him. I simply told him, "That is the Tragically Hip," and he looked confused and walked away. It seemed like a lot of people who were the fans of the band must have had a contact for the show that day.
People say, oh, they didn't make it in the States. Well, they did. The Hip had a massive impact in Europe, and they had very successful tours in the States. I was happy to give them a nudge when I did Saturday Night Live and had them on the show. The audience reaction was outstanding. Dan Aykroyd, This Is Our Life.
Again, the dose of humility that the road gives you is really important. It fuels that sense of humor and camaraderie. Performing to so many people watching on TV, then coming down and playing a shithole club would break some musicians' backs. They just wouldn't be able to handle it. But we learned how to. In fact, it made us better at what we did. Gord Sinclair, This Is Our Life.
That was the day that daylight saving time started in 1995, so I was effectively losing an hour of sleep. But I got up early the next morning so I could get to the music store and buy Day for Night before it could sell out. I thought for sure there would be dozens of people looking to pick it up. Very nearly 30 years later, I am still stunned that most of my fellow Americans did not have the same reaction that I did to what is clearly the greatest band of all time.
Thanks for listening to our first Podumentary. To send feedback or to take part in future episodes, write to JD at tttop40@gmail.com. Enjoy new episodes of the Tragically Hip Top 40 Countdown every Monday, wherever you get podcasts. This is Kirk Lane saying, pick up your shit.
To podcasts and such.
All you homeowners have unique needs. Some feel the need to leave up holiday decorations year-round. Others have the need to use their garage as practice space for their new metal band. And because each homeowner has unique needs, Geico helps you get the right coverage for your home and what's in it. That way, you get exactly what's right for you, even if your needs are unique. Get more with Geico.